good. So Adam, what are we talking about this morning?
Security awareness training, making your users part of the solution.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get those users carrying around fire extinguishers instead of dynamite sticks, right?
Yes.
All right. So, what is security awareness training? Let's talk about it. What is it? Why do customers need it?
Yeah, so it's really kind of a set of tools or a set of processes to train your users on the threats of the internet. A lot of it's focused on email. So email is the top threat vector. We see about 90% of all infections coming through email. And that's really where the bad guys are going after. They know we've put in big firewalls, we've put in a lot of web filtering, web protections, but the users are still the weakest link. So they're attacking the users through email. So security training is focusing on giving them the tools they need to stay safe on the internet with email. So we're going to do things like sending them fake phishing emails, giving them quick videos and quizzes so that they know what's a good email, what's a safe email, and what not to do.
Yeah, now we just went through some of this at CMA, and I know our internal assessment, we do this stuff for a living. I actually thought that assessment was pretty difficult. Some of those questions were pretty tricky.
Yeah. I had some people stop me in the office saying the same thing. They were kind of asking about it and had questions. Hey, I'm sorry if I did bad on the test. And that's part of it is teaching people and learning about it.
I have to be honest, when you send me emails right now, I almost feel like I need to do a peer review on your email before I do anything with it. So I'm very careful. And if it's got a link or a picture or anything, I get real nervous.
That's good.
So real world stories, this is kind of one of my favorite things to talk about. I mean, we're doing this managed service for our customers, right? Where we're actually managing this for them, where their IT department isn't doing this, but we're doing it. So we're testing everybody. We're testing the IT department, we're testing the end users. And I'm always love to hear some of these real world stories that you guys are doing out there in the field with some of our clients. Talk through a few of those. They're just more memorable. Some real world stats that we've turned around with users. I think that's relatable information.
Yeah, so for me, it's always fun to kind of send out the phishing emails and see what appeals to people. Around the holidays, obviously, shipping notifications, you've got a package coming, people are more likely to click on. What we found recently is people are getting better and better about not clicking on links in email, which is good. They're getting the message, they're hearing it on the news even, they're realizing that's a bad thing. And so what we've done is we did, with one of our customers, we realized that their numbers had gone from around 30-40% to less than 10%. Pretty consistently. So less than 10% of our users were clicking on links, and we felt like they were really getting the message. So we changed it up a little bit and sent out an attachment instead of a link and said, okay, well, let's see if they don't open the attachment. And it was a speeding ticket. So they had gotten a speeding ticket. They had to open it to pay the fine or whatever. And it was back up around 70%. And so just changing that method of delivery from a link to an attachment kind of got people out of that mindset of thinking links are bad. And they kind of just auto-clicked it. They just saw it, they responded, and the president over there was just so frustrated. He's like, they wouldn't email your work about a ticket. Like, come on, think about it. But he just didn't realize that people just have this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I'm in trouble, I need to respond to this. And so anytime you see something that has that sense of urgency or that sense of do something quick, that's what they're trying to get people to do, is just quickly respond and feel like they have to do something. And that's when you really need to think twice and be careful about it.
Yeah, I love that term autopilot, because man, I know that there's just some things you see and you don't even think twice about. You just go for that mouse and you're just going to click on it and not even think.
Yeah, definitely a lot of that.
So I know also one of the things that we talked about that people apparently really like pizza. So we've had some pizza coupons or something that we've done, and that's been a real popular thing to trip up some people.
Yeah, pizza coupons for free pizza. We've actually had at least one person that printed it out and brought it into, I think it was Pizza Hut, and tried to redeem it for a free pizza. And the local guys were like, oh, okay, I guess this is legit. And they got a free pizza out of it. So, those kinds of things, whatever you can do to appeal to people, getting something free or making them feel like they're in trouble or they have to respond is really what we see the most, the highest click rates, the most response on.
Yeah. And those are funny stories, but on the sales side, of course, we're always talking to customers. And last week, I actually had a client. You and I talked about this late in the week. And unfortunately, we hear these stories all the time. But it's somebody we've done business with a long time. One of the users went out and entered her Office 365 credentials on a site. It was a phishing site, a phishing email. and the bad guys basically gained access to her email, got into their Office 365, downloaded their entire user directory, and then all of a sudden they start getting all these notifications that from all their other systems with all these remote login attempts to all these different accounts from all across the world. So they pretty much got their whole email system compromised. Now the good news is they didn't really get to anything. They didn't actually get in the email. They were able to change all that. But still now 1,000-something email addresses, the whole company email directory is out there floating around. And it's not a good situation at all.
Yeah, and that's a lot of this. I would say the smaller risk, right? The big risk is you lose your password, people steal data, they steal things, but it's also just that organizational information you can lose from that aspect that people think less about. But it's still important to not really give any information out or lose any information.
Right. Yeah. No, nobody would really want that out on the street.
No.
So, Adam, phishing, and I'm not talking FISH like in a lake in our great state. Sportsman's Paradise. I'm talking phishing with a PH. Talk to us a little bit about what that means and why that's bad.
Yeah, so phishing is essentially an email trying to get users to perform some action. Usually it's clicking a link in an email, it might be opening an attachment, but trying to trick users into, or catch users, which is why the term is phishing, into doing something, a risky action. So if you click a link in an email, most of the time it's going to look like fake login site, maybe to Microsoft or to Office 365 or to something, and try to get you to put your credentials in there. When you do that, they've basically stolen your username and password, which they can then use to pretend to be you or gain access to one of your websites.
Right. Now, phishing is kind of the top thing. I mean, it's what gets everybody's attention, but there are some other things out there as well, like vishing, smishing. Maybe what are some of these other things that are out there that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, so vishing is basically voice phishing. So phone calls that you receive from someone saying that they're from the help desk or tech support or Microsoft, and you've got a virus and I need to help you fix it. And they'll oftentimes try to get you to go to a website and install some software on your computer. And essentially what they're doing is trying to get you to put a virus on your computer, so then they have access to it, or they can install ransomware or whatever that is. So if you ever get an unsolicited call from someone trying to help you fix your computer when you don't have problems with it, you basically just want to hang up the phone on them. Unfortunately, they tend to prey on elderly people or people that are not as tech savvy, and it's unfortunate because they do make a lot of money doing that.
I've actually had some personal experience with that with my father-in-law that had some iTunes cards that were ordered, and he actually had them and was getting ready to send them. I'm like, well, no, what are you doing? Give me your grandkids. Don't send them to hackers.
Yeah, unfortunately. And smishing, SMS phishing basically is text message phishing. I actually got one of these yesterday, supposedly from Chase Bank, telling me my account was locked. Obviously, it's not locked, and it's not from Chase. But especially now that a lot of the your companies you deal with, like iTunes and Chase and Amazon and whoever, they actually do send you text messages. It becomes more legitimate, and so the bad guys, it's very easy for them to send. They could send hundreds of text messages for pennies. So they just blast them out and hope that you click on the link or hope that you do something. And so if I had clicked the link in the text message saying my Chase Bank account was unlocked, it would have brought me to some website that was a fake Chase website and tried to get me to log in. And once again, that's where they could try to steal my credentials and try to get access to my accounts that way. So just different ways of phishing, just not through email typically is what those are.
Yeah, they're also I think this is fascinating from the social engineering, point of view. They're using pretexting, right, where they're finding older passwords and stuff and putting this in emails that come to you. And I've had multiple customers ask us, "Hey, is this a legit email that I got?" Maybe not necessarily from CMA, but from others. And like, look, they even had one of my passwords in here. How did they get that?
Yep. Yeah. So so many companies have been breached at this point, and they lose all this data. If you think over the last 5 years, how many times companies have lost credit card data or usernames and passwords and all these things. And so when it happens, you go in and you change your username and password to target.com or whatever, right? And you don't really think twice about it. But 3 years later, the bad guys still have that big database. And so they'll send you an email and saying, "Hey, I've got your password." And all of a sudden you're more alert because that is a password you've used. You might not have used it in 2 years, but it's a real password. So you you give it a little more context, a little more seriousness, because you think maybe they do have access to my account. Maybe they do have access to my information. And so they find ways to kind of have a little nugget of truth in there to make you more likely to click on it or more likely to respond.
Gotcha. Bad guys, man. Don't like them.
No, they've got plenty of time on their hands.
So, I mean, just average click rates. I mean, I know that we go in, and so we kind of do this baseline where we will send out a test and try to get a feel for what users are doing. And that's always very eye-opening to companies, where if I've got 100 users and 60% of the people are clicking on something, that means that 60 people are possible problems. So what are you seeing out there for just general averages? Is it the same across different sectors? You know, we do a lot with healthcare, finance, and government. Is it about the same for everybody, or is it different?
Yeah, it really depends. I would say it's, it is pretty standard across, but there are some sectors that I see government especially is a lot higher in general. We've seen some that are as high as 80 or 90% for that first test. And that's when you kind of get the customer picking up the phone, like, is it really this bad? Like, what happened? And I think it's eye-opening, because it's a problem. People are going to click it, but when you realize it's that many, you realize that it's a big problem in your organization. Unfortunately, it only takes one. If your click rate is 1%, that's still 1% too many. But I would say in general, probably between 40 and 60% is where we typically see customers start. And after working with them for 3 to 6 months, we can get that number down to about 10, 15% usually, sometimes lower. That's just with the combination of the training and the phishing that we do repeatedly. So every month we're doing something with them.
Yeah, so it's an ongoing thing. I mean, it just never stops. We got to keep doing it.
Exactly.
So why do like automated systems like what we're using work better than the traditional, just kind of like lunch and learns, or the little email blast to the employees saying, hey, helpful tips from IT, don't do this? Why is the training so much more effective in changing behavior than some of these old systems that we've used over the years?
Yeah, so it's really the interactive nature of it. Because the threats are constantly coming, doing a lunch and learn once a year or once a quarter doesn't really have that same effect. Going into a conference room and talking about something isn't the same as experiencing it at your computer. And so what we try to do is simulate the threat as much as possible by sending an actual email that looks like a phishing attack, giving them interactive modules where they have to actually click on URLs or select ones that look, pick the ones that are legitimate or not legitimate. And so having them kind of in that lab environment, if you will, on their computer is a real world training. It's also interactive and constantly ongoing. And that's the key, I think, that we find, is that it's really that continuous education that helps, as opposed to something once a year that they'll remember for a week or two, but 6 months down the road, they're not going to remember those things and they're not going to have it fresh in their mind.
Right. Now you do some pretty scary, like heart attack type moments, right? Where they click on some of these things and they get some pretty scary messages up on the screen, right?
Yep. Yeah. So part of what we do is, it's called a teachable moment. The idea is when you actually click the phishing link, it'll pop up at you and say, hey, you've been infected with ransomware. And then, a little smaller down the page, hey, this is just a test, right? So kind of get that heart-stopping moment, like, oh my God, what did I do? And you realize that just that one click could have given you and everyone in your company a really bad day. And so that kind of, like you put it, that heart-stopping moment, that oh no, what did I do? Really reinforces that. That's all it takes, is you clicking one button, making one mistake to really cause problems for your whole company. I think that reinforces the fact with them that that's really all it takes. So from a sales side, Jonathan, I mean, what are you seeing customers telling you? Why are they going towards something like this, as opposed to, like you said, the training, annual training, lunch and learns kind of stuff? What kind of value do they see in these types of programs that we're offering them?
Yeah, I think from a risk perspective, more than anything else, people are starting to understand that you just absolutely have to do this and you have to spend money on it. I think from what I've seen in the IT teams, we've seen some companies do better jobs of implementing these programs on their own and maintaining them. On the flip side, we've seen customers buy this software with the best of intentions, and then just the day happens to you. You're constantly running around putting out fires, and before you know it, you're 2 or 3 months down the road and you're like, man, I hadn't even done this training yet. So I think that from the managed services side of the house that we have at CMA, that's been kind of a godsend for people, because we're able to not only, we just take the entire load off the plate for the IT team, right? And they don't have to worry about it. They get all these nice reports, and they're able to show to the powers that be just real concrete evidence. And there's not a lot of things that you can do in IT, I think, that get the attention of the C-suite, right? It's like, oh, why did we just spend $100,000 on new firewalls? Well, I mean, that's just real hard to show people. But this, number one, this isn't expensive software. It's not expensive to have us manage it, and it's very effective for training your end users. So it's just a very tangible, real thing. And I think when you're in IT and you're kind of selling it upstream like that, you just get a lot of traction.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think it's hard to show a kind of clear ROI, especially in security tools. This is one where you can show a graph showing this is our click rate, this is it going down, down, down. So it's nice to have those graphs and be able to show your management those things.
Yeah, it's a cyber hygiene thing. I mean, you're making your users smarter, not only in your workplace, but also when they go home, right?
Yep.
So, they can go home. And that's another thing right now that I think is super important, because we have a lot of remote users working from home networks, right? And some people do a better job of securing those environments than others. There are a lot of security controls that you can put around that. But at the end of the day, if they're at their house and they're on one of their own PCs that's already been compromised because they clicked on something 6 months or a year ago that they've long forgotten about, but that bad software has just been kind of sitting there. All of a sudden now you've got that exposure. Your attack surface is much, much larger. So just in general, I think having better cyber hygiene or better cyber citizens, whichever word you want to use, is a good practice.
Yep. No, totally agree. And then you mentioned the software is not very expensive, right? We can manage it for them. What options do customers have as far as paying for this?
Yeah, we've seen, so for some of our managed services clients that we have that we're already doing monthly billing on, this is a real easy add-on. Hey, let's just start, we'll throw this in there and we can bill you monthly for the software and monthly for the managed service. For some of our other customers, government customers, people that are just used to doing annual contracts, that's easy too. So we've got a lot of flexibility with that. And I'd say I've seen about a 50-50 split between my customer base with how they're doing this. But I think, again, just kind of reiterating the bang for the buck, there are not a lot of things that you can do that they're as affordable as this, that produce real results like this. I mean, if you had to ask me, I would say, I don't know. I don't know what is more affordable than this that produces this type of impact.
Completely agree.
All right. So security awareness training. And how are you available, I guess, Adam, to talk to customers about this if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, definitely. My contact information is on the video. You can reach out to me directly or to your CMA account manager. They can get me engaged, and love to talk to you more about it. We can show you kind of a quick demo of what the tools look like and some examples, and what the reporting looks like. I know that's most important to a lot of people, to see what you're going to see out of it. What kind of results, what kind of things can we share internally with the company, so we can show you what all those reports that you'll see, so you can really dive into the details of how your users are performing and how they're responding to the training.
Awesome. Well, you always do such a great job with our customers. Appreciate it, Adam. Enjoyed catching up with you this morning, man.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate it.